I'm doing secret drug experiments by our government and others. Okay, so this is definitely an issue because a lot of the times there's not consent that's involved with these secret experiments, and also just because they're so secretive. I mean, hence the name. They're not really telling the people what they're doing, so it is a problem because it involves consent. And there's oftentimes a lot of detrimental effects that are involved with these experiments, so it's very important that if the government is going to do something like this, that it should be guided by medical experts and there should be consent involved. Ideally not on people, because animals would make a better comparison. Like rats are known to have a system that's similar to humans. But anyways, so the German Democratic Republic government is one example of a hormonal doping and androgenization of athletes. So it was found that a lot of documents were actually discovered from 1966 and on, and lots of physicians and scientists, including professors, all performed doping research on athletes. So thousands of athletes, including minors, were given androgens, and it was usually focused on females primarily and young girls. They were mostly given the androgenic anabolic steroids. The problem with this, though, is what was recorded was damaging side effects, and they oftentimes required, some of the times they required surgical or medical intervention. So since the mid-1970s, the use of androgenics has actually been banned by the sports authorities, so it is technically not allowed. So over here to the right is a figure which displays the effects of an androgenic anabolic steroid, or turinabol, on the performance of a female athlete. And so what the numbers demonstrate is that the tablets that the athletes were taking per week, and the rectangle shows like the drug administration from a certain time period, so from July to October. And the curve represents the actual results of the specific competitions that they had participated in. And there was actually one of the females who had trained for 14 years showed dramatic improvement when she had taken these drugs. So she gained unprecedented muscle strength, and improved her records dramatically over just a few weeks that she was taking this drug compared to all the training that she had done. So now we're going to go over the damages, and some of the athletes have publicly come forward and described the damages, and they've also sued the people responsible for it, because in a lot of these cases, oftentimes there wasn't medical requirement or justification or consent. In one case, a 15-year-old girl was given what she thought was vitamin tablets because that was what her coach had told her. And oftentimes they are giving the forceful administration of these drugs to minors. And one girl who actually had defected to the West because she wanted to escape because they wouldn't let her stop using the drugs. So she had defected to the West, and she had reported the GDR. And actually one of the side effects that she had come down with was a deepened voice. So here are some of the other side effects on male and females. You can get body weight increase, polycystic ovarian syndrome, nymphomania, deaths, arrest of body growth. That's usually in minors, and the deaths were in the often bigger bodybuilders and a hammer thrower. And like we went over, one of the girls got a deep voice. You can also get severe liver damage, constipation, acne, irregular menstruation, loss of libido. And so now another case that I outlined was something that happened in the USA, and it was in San Francisco, and it's called Operation Midnight Climax. And what had happened, it was like a sub-project of the CIA that was like a sponsored mind control program, and it was started up in the 1950s, And so what they had actually done is they were getting prostitutes that they had on their payroll, and they were luring these individuals in and then giving them LSD. And also they were giving them marijuana, and they would just monitor them behind a glass. And so this was used for extensive research on like sexual blackmail, surveillance technology, and the use of mind-altering drugs on field operations. So one of the quotes I actually pulled was from an internal CIA memo, and they basically said that everyone was a target. So all social levels, high, low, Native Americans, foreign, like it didn't matter. Like they needed all of this data. Like it was very important. And this actually escaped scrutiny for about a decade, but until John F. Kennedy came into the picture, he had forced the CIA director, Allen, to resign, and he was the one who had initially first signed off on MK Ultra. And so it was also noted that several of these individuals did get ill from the psychoactive drugs, and the only reason they wanted to shut it down was because of embarrassment that the government would suffer because of this. So what had happened is lawmakers had denounced that the CIA's covert domestic activities, but ultimately no disciplinary action was taken. And it was decided that the people that were targeted needed to be notified, but there wasn't really much of a paper trail, so only 14 people ended up being notified. And one of the men that happened to be affected was a guy named Richie, who was given LSD, and so he went to court because he wanted to win, because the LSD was the reason why he had committed a robbery attempt. Otherwise he wouldn't have done this, but unfortunately the judge did not rule in his favor, and he said that you could have very well been given LSD, but we do not operate on assumptions. So there was another case. It was French bread being spiked with LSD in a science experiment. And what happened was that these people in France initially thought that, the people in France were affected by mold. But after a journalist uncovered more information about it, he actually found out that it had to do with the CIA. But of course the French government denied all knowledge of anything that had to do with it. And what had happened to the people was, which is why consent and just knowing what you're doing is very important, they had frightful hallucinations of terrifying beasts and fire. An 11-year-old even tried to strangle his grandmother, and a man thought he was a plane. And aside from that, a man also tried to drown himself. So the LSD experiments in America and Europe and Asia, so it was actually carried out because the US believed that we were falling behind. And in the 1960s, Army intelligence expanded the arsenal's work on LSD, testing it as using it for drug interrogation techniques in Europe and Asia. In Asia, known as Operation Delirium. And these are the references.